Okay, I want to give you an overview of the background essay. So, the background essay is just what it sounds like. You're providing background information for your reader so that once you get to the debate, which is going to happen in the literature review, your reader understands a good bit about the subject already. For example, if I'm going to write about whether or not we should get rid of the Electoral College, my background essay should teach my reader a little bit about what the Electoral College is, how it started, how it actually works, why it started, um, how it's been a factor in American elections throughout history, and even the status of it today, particularly in the 2016 election. Nowhere in the background essay do I actually get into the different opinions on whether or not we should do away with the Electoral College. So the background essay is completely factual, no opinions whatsoever. Also, you're going to use sources throughout your background essay to educate the reader on all aspects of it. In your discussion, which will be the next assignment, you're going to actually run some ideas past the members of your base group for what should actually go in your background essay based on what they feel like they should learn, having known, because they don't know as much about the subject as you do. Okay, so also the background essay gets structured like any other academic essay. It's got an introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion. The introduction has an attention getter. And if you remember, I've given you 4 strategies for an attention getter. General information, where you whittle down into something more specific. So if my topic is the Electoral College, I might start by talking about elections in general, or voting in general, or politics in general, and whittle down to, or narrow it down to, the Electoral College. You can also use an attention getter that is an anecdote. I'm going to go over Duran's background essay. He used an anecdote. You're probably looking at some spicy words here. Then you could use a flip the script strategy where you start talking about one thing and then you flip it around. So for mine, maybe I could talk about how all of our votes count, every single vote matters, go on and on and on. And then always with the flip the script, you're going to use the word however, because you're turning things upside down. However, in American politics, the Electoral College often decides an election. So it's like sort of throwing the reader off a little bit. This can be a fun way to get the reader's attention if it can work for your topic. And then finally, another way to get the reader's attention is to ask rhetorical questions. So these are questions that you're writing to get the reader to think. They're not actually going to answer them. In no instances do you want to use a quote as part of the attention getter. You definitely don't want to use a dictionary definition anywhere in a college essay, and leave all kinds of source material out of the introduction and conclusion. Also, you're going to sometimes use more than one source in these essays. So with the Coates essay, you were just using the case for reparations, but in your research essays, you might use more than one source in an actual body paragraph. So I'm going to actually show you this with Duran's essay. He's got, it works just like any other source sandwich, but it ends up being a double-decker. So let me make this so it's on one page. So here's a body paragraph that uses 2 sources. It's using Cloud, and it's using Drew Kingston and Philip Firestone. So it's a little confusing because each of these sources is actually talking about a book. The books aren't the sources. These writers' articles are actually Duran's sources here. So let's look at this body paragraph. He's got a topic sentence that gives an overview of that whole paragraph. I'm going to do this with highlighter. So I'm going to make the Duran's writing in yellow. Now he's introducing a source, and again, he's using narrative citation, not parenthetical. So narrative citation means it's part of the sentence. So Cloud, just the year, in parentheses, Cloud informs. So this is what's actually coming from the source. I'm going to make it green. And then what Duran does is he pops back in with his own comment. And in this case, his comment is kind of an interpretation of what the source actually said. Then he goes on to the next source. Now, he doesn't have to write a new topic sentence. This one topic sentence covers this whole paragraph, but here he's citing his next sources, and he's paraphrasing that source with these two writers. And then at the end, he's going back in and commenting. So you can see the yellow being Duran and the green being two different sources. Actually, I could probably make this source a different color because it's a different source. So the two different sources happen in between Duran. That's what makes it a sandwich. The source is sandwiched between the topic sentence and the comment, and then a second source and a comment. So this is how you would incorporate two sources in the same body paragraph. You could even go on and use three. So comment on this last source, and then you could introduce another source, quote it or paraphrase it, and then comment on it. Also a reminder, you only want to quote when something's jazzy. Now, there isn't a lot of jazzy stuff usually in the background essay because it's so factual. I think Duran only has one or two here. He's got one where the source wrote, "Woods made sex addiction famous." Now that's jazzy because if you remember, Tiger Woods, the famous golfer, got sort of caught cheating on his wife. She ran after him with a golf club, big drama. So Duran actually chose this as his topic right after the Tiger Woods scandal. So this quote, "Woods made sex addiction famous," is jazzy. It's jazzy because it's a weird thing to say, to make sex addiction famous, but it implies that it was on the cover of magazines, all that kind of stuff. So that would be jazzy. Actually, you know what? Duran forgot his page number here. So again, when you end a quote, you've got to end with the page number. And I want to make sure to go over how to space this. So the quote ends with the last quote marks. You want a space, parentheses, just a P period, not PG, another space, the page number, the parentheses, and then the period. So only one period at the end. You don't want a period inside the quote marks when you're using a page number. Additionally, let's see. He's using sources throughout. He's got a general introduction in the beginning. Again, he's using an anecdote. So Duran made up a character named Martin, and Martin's got an issue with looking at porn on his phone. There was a movie, Don John, was that the movie? There was a movie with a character who was doing this. So that's Duran's attention getter. Is it a good attention getter? Yeah, it's pretty spicy and interesting. So it gets your attention, it makes you want to read it. Notice how long the attention getter is. And then the thesis is just down here. The thesis is just a couple of sentences. The thesis statement for the background essay can be a little tricky because what you're doing is just letting the reader know that they're going to learn about your subject in general. So what he says is the idea of sex addiction has been around for a very long time. Lots of research has been done in the past 2 decades to try and answer some of the most frequently asked questions about sex addiction. So the thesis to attention getter ratio is about 3 parts thesis, 1 part 3 parts attention getter, 1 part thesis. I usually say the attention getter should be twice as long as the thesis. So then he's got topic sentences that kind of take us through the paper. So he's going to talk about the history of sex addiction, publications on sex addiction, how there are different terms for sex addiction, how lately sex addiction has been really making the news. And then he gets more specific. There are celebrities that have made sex addiction a big deal lately. And again, this is about 8 years old, this paper. Then he talks about the whole idea of making sex addiction an official diagnosis. Then he talks about one method of treating it. Then he talks about other methods of treating it. Then he talks about different types of sex addicts. So he's really given us all the background information we could possibly want without going into the debate about whether sex addiction is a real disease. So that's what his background essay is doing. He's got a general conclusion. The conclusion sums up the main things he wrote about, and then he's got a general final thought about addiction in general. Then, oh, I don't know what happened here. Something happened with the spacing. That is my fault. I copied this out of the handbook. So when you do your references page, this is how you want to do it. You want to have, this should be centered. I don't know why I'm not. Anyway, pretend this is centered. Something got screwed up. This should be in the center in bold. No extra size or anything. And then you are putting whatever sources you use for this essay in alphabetical order and in hanging indent. You're taking out that little description from your annotated bibliography, so that doesn't actually belong in the references page. So you'll notice Duran only used 3 sources for his background essay. There is no rule about how many sources you need to use for each essay. And I've also said this a few times, you might find that those original 10 sources don't all work for you. You might toss a couple and you might add some more. So I just wanted you to have 10 sources at the beginning to sort of dive into, get to know about this topic, include on your annotated bibliography. But as you write the essays, you can kind of gather some new ones, and maybe you won't use all of the ones you initially chose. All right, I hope this helps. Now you're going to take a quiz and hope it goes well.